What's up, everyone, and welcome to ClearTalk. It's fire pit time. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the Mount Rushmore speech. All right, on July 3rd. This speech by Trump, a lot was said. A lot was said that I think every American needs to really evaluate and quite frankly, be concerned about. And it's very telling. Uh, for what's to come. So thank you very much for joining me here. If you would like to check out more from the channel, please do so. There's links in the description down below for this channel, for my other channels. If you so subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. That's all free for you. Helps out tremendously. If you would like to go further and you have Patreon there. $2 you can support any of the channels you would like. You also get discount on the merch. If you're a Patreon member, check out the merch. I have merch for every channel there. All the links in the description down below. So thank you very much for joining me, and let's get to it. So this speech on July 3rd was, when we're talking about Independence Day, when we're talking about celebrating 250 years on this particular Independence Day. The idea of previous speeches on July 4th, or, on the eve of July 4th, the typical idea is to do everything you can in a speech to unify. That's what the time for Independence Day is to unify the entirety of the country. Put all our politics aside, put all our differences aside. We're celebrating the fact that we are all united as a country, all of our differences, all of our, everything. And we're united as one under a nation with freedoms and independence and striving for excellence, whatever. That's what it's supposed to be. And while there were parts of this speech that were certainly trying to do that. But like everything Trump has done in his first administration, and even now, even more so now, is division and being divisive as much as possible. Condemning and shit talking about people. I mean, he just can't do with that. He cannot go without trying to divide in some sort of way. This was not the first speech that he's given at Mount Rushmore. The first one was in 2020, in the midst of COVID and the BLM protests and riots and stuff over George Floyd, and that speech was controversial in its moment. But this particular one kind of takes the cake on even that speech. So one facet of this speech that in all around trying to actually like speak about unity, speak about the bold and beautiful and amazing, all these things of America, and doing this under the guise of Mount Rushmore, under the guise of four individuals in history that a lot of Americans deem as like American heroes. Although also it's understood that they were imperfect and that there's some question to all of them, especially for some people, which we will discuss. But ultimately, they even through all their bads and controversies themselves, they were American heroes. They are the epitome of progression of America, good or bad, however you want to look at it. And so, and under doing this, though, again, supposed to be unifying, but instead Trump chose to divide. And in reference to the Democratic Party, opposition, liberals, everybody across the United States that opposes MAGA, but not only MAGA, but the Trump regime and what they are doing, Republicans in general. He defines the Democratic Party as the Communist Party. I'm not kidding you. He does. He makes communism the top threat for America. Okay, he states that communism is a mortal threat to American liberty, the enemy of the Constitution, the enemy of July 4th, and then it goes on to state that it is the greatest threat, more threatening than even World War I, World War II, Pearl Harbor, or even 9/11. Okay, he's stating that communism is a larger threat than all of these wars and threats that we have had that have actually created like death and destruction, or trying to defend and protect against fascism, like World War II. Okay, which ironically, we are seeing with this Trump regime, right? And he goes on to state, in trying to equate the. Understand that this is all wrapped around the Republican structure right now for the midterms is seemingly outside of trying to do everything they can to control elections, is to deem the opposition as communist. Like, that seems to be their go-to now. They're trying to state all of these democratic socialists, okay, or any kind of progressive policies as communism. It's not even close. Okay, democratic socialism is a framework, an ideology that fits and works within the ideals of America, that fits within capitalism. Okay, it's just capitalism with a little bit of socialism sprinkled in. Okay, it is not communism, for starters. But to even argue communism as a major threat to the Constitution and the whole liberty and institution of the United States is quite silly itself. I mean, honestly, because communism, just like socialism, just like capitalism, is just an economic system. It is not a system that is completely inherent of a whole totality of how everybody lives. It doesn't revolve around religion, revolve around a whole entirety makeup of government. It's just an economic system. But whatever, I digress from all that. Then he goes on to say that you can't be loyal to Karl Marx or loyal to America. You can be loyal to Karl Marx or loyal to America, but you can't be loyal to both. You can be loyal to, you can be a communist or you can be a patriot, but you can't be both. Okay, making these types of statements, that's basically stating that, okay, if you have the ideology or you have sympathy towards progressive views, social democratic views, then you are not a patriot. You are a communist, and therefore you are an enemy. Okay? Because remember, he said there's a mortal threat to the American liberty, the enemy of the Constitution, the enemy of the July 4th, the enemy of the whole establishment of America. He continues to link immigration to this, because he goes on to state that communism, of the communist resurgence, saying that the communist menace includes newcomers to our country who embrace ideals totally opposed to our way of life, and states that the Democrats are the Communist Party made up of illegal immigrants, criminals, and everybody that doesn't want to work. again, sowing hatred, sowing division, sowing evil, quote unquote evil, because that's what they consider all of those things, to the Democratic Party, and framing it into communism. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is a lie, complete falsehood on every level when it comes to the Democratic Party, and even more so when it comes to the specifics around social democracy or progressive views. I mean, okay, so it's evil. It is against American. It is anti-American to care about helping people, to deem healthcare as a right, to make sure people have health care, to try to take care of children, make sure that they're taken care of, make sure that families can afford food and afford housing and afford to live in America. It's against America for policies around, trying to uplift middle America, try to close the wealth gap that has went rampant in the recent decades. The reason why there is such a huge difference now between the elite billionaires and now fucking trillionaire for the first time ever, and pretty much everybody else, the bottom 50% of America. I mean, it is that is considered evil and anti-American. So is America only good for, I mean, quite literal separation of the haves and have-nots? Is that what it's for? Is it for the elite to just strip and take and funnel all the money and all the wealth and all the resources away from everybody else? Is that what America is supposed to be about? I don't know. Then, and in doing all this, then he pushes the Republicans to abolish the filibuster and to press through with the Save America Act. Okay, this is what they've been trying to press through, the act around trying to put very harsh policies around voter ID, the elimination of mail-in ballots, that will disenfranchise and oppress voting all across the country, and goes on to state that if we can, pass through the Save America Act, then the Republicans are guaranteed a victory, okay? Guaranteed victory for the next 100 years. For any party to declare that passing through one bill through Congress would deem that party the ability to win elections for the next 100 years, even the next 10 or 20 years is quite concerning. But to argue that it will help guarantee their victory for the next 100 years, that should make you reevaluate said bill. Because there's something there that should be very much questionable. That one particular ideology would deem superior and unable to defeat at the ballot box. And how and why. That should be very, 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 very concerning. And then he also goes on to declare that such doctrine, talking about the Democratic Party, the Communist Party, Karl Marx, and all this stuff, such doctrine can be given no quarter. Okay, this is the same shit that Keg's Breath said about Iran and about people that we cannot give no quarter to the enemy and enemies of Iran. And when you talk about giving no quarter, that is literally being completely mercifulness. Like, a complete death and eradication of your opposition. No, like, protections, no, like, if you just, submit or whatever, then we will give you, we'll be merciful to you and allow you to live and blah, blah. No, that, to give no quarter is to completely eliminate, giving no mercy, eradication. No matter whether you submit or not. That is a hell of a thing to say when talking about at least 50% of the country. At the very least 50% of the country. That is something that should be extremely concerning. That they are declaring the ideology that they deem as communism, which they are now deeming the Democratic Party as being taken over by. And if you in any way, have sympathy towards that, you are to be given no quarter. That is a hell of a statement to say. One other thing I wanted to point out, he says, we remember that we have created in this country is not the natural way of the world. It is not the norm. It is the exception. It is rare, it is priceless, and it is truly miraculous when talking about the development of America and what we have established here. As it's one of a kind. Throughout the entire history of humanity, most people in most places have lived a life plagued by suffering, poverty, exploitation, violence, and misery. Is that to say that the United States does not experience that? We do not experience suffering. We don't experience poverty. We don't experience exploitation, violence, or misery. We are miraculous and exceptional and not a natural way of the world. Because, that's what he's deeming as the natural way of the world is suffering, poverty, exploitation, violence, and misery. I'm sorry to say, bub, but you quite literally defined America. Because America and Americans, I'm pretty sure, will state that they have indeed endured suffering, poverty, exploitation, violence, and misery throughout the history of... America is no different from any other empire ever in history. It's just not. We were developed by the same means, barbaric, colonial, murderous means that of any other empire pretty much in history. We're no different. We're not. We are the we. If anything, we are more norm than others. If you want to say there's a history of normality that represents that should be represented outside of America, we are actually the norm. If that's the norm, absolutely crazy, absolutely crazy, and that should be very concerning. Completely dividing and stating these things about, again, at the very least 50% of America. I would argue way more than 50%. But you've basically deemed half of the country as enemies of the state that you will give no quarter to. And that should be very concerning. The other issue outside of what he said about the opposition was also the location of this being done at Mount Rushmore. And again, as I stated before, that, you know, while a lot of Americans deem this, you know, this location as, you know, something of American heroes, he stated, "As for those who peddle Marxist lies about our heritage, tell our children that we live on stolen land or that our heroes were oppressors. They're doing something much worse than slandering our past. They are slandering and attacking our future. Not going to let that happen." So he's stating that when anybody that, you know, tries to be critical of American history, of how we were developed, of how we treated Native Americans, of how we treated those that were already here, that, you know, saying that actually we aren't inherent here, we are immigrants ourselves, we stole this land, we oppressed people right off the bat, and he's stating that that is worse. Something much worse than just slandering our past. It's not, they are slandering and attacking our future because we plan to do the same in the future. Is that the plans? That the acts and stuff that we did in development of this country, we will continue to do in the future? So that is a slander? So that is, I'm confused. But understand the history here, okay? Mount Rushmore was carved on the Black Hills, okay? This is a place where the Lakota tribe considered sacred. The U.S. government took this land illegally, and the Supreme Court even later agreed that we took it illegally, okay? There was something called the Treaty of Fort Laramie. This was in 1868. The U.S. government granted the Black Hills to the Lakota in perpetuity, okay, at that moment. But then, later, after gold was discovered and settlers flooded into the area for said gold, the U.S. seized the land, violating that treaty with the Lakota tribe. The Supreme Court ruled in 1980 that the United States versus the Sioux Nation, that the court ruled that the land was illegally taken and that the government owed compensation to the Sioux. But the Sioux refused that money. It was over $1 billion that they were going to give them in compensation. But the Sioux refused that money because for them, it felt like they would be selling their land. That they would be officially selling their land. And all they wanted was the land returned to them. Okay. This is land that the Sioux, the Lakota tribes, deemed as a spiritual center, place of origin stories, and site for ceremonies and ancestral connections. This is a very sacred area to them, that they were promised by our government, but then stolen back, seized because of the gold rush. But not, and then turned around and carved these faces on this rock. Okay? And what's controversial about that? The Mount Rushmore was carved by Gutzon Borglum. Okay? I might be messing that name up, but nevertheless. He was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Okay? He supported white supremacy. And the faces carved on the mountain, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Theodore, although many Americans deem them as heroes, for a lot of native nations, Washington authorized wars against the Native Americans. Jefferson pushed westward expansion into native lands. Lincoln ordered the largest mass execution in U.S. history, which was 38 Dakota men. And Theodore Roosevelt once said, I don't go as far as to think the only good Indians are dead Indians, but I believe 9 out of 10 are. So for a lot of Native Americans, the fact that that it was allowed for these faces to be put on this sacred ground that we stole is disrespectful. And when we have a president standing up there giving a speech before our Independence Day, talking about all these heroes and talking about that, people claim that we're on stolen land and how dare they? This is disrespectful and slander on American history to claim that we live on stolen land while quite literally giving that speech on stolen land. Stolen land that our own Supreme Court deemed in 1980, 36 years ago. Sorry, 46 years ago. As true. As law. That we indeed stole that land. And deeming all opposition as communists and enemies of the state. This should be concerning. If you can't look at all that and realize that this could quite literally be one of the most divisive speeches ever given on a date like this, where we are supposed to be trying to unify the country, and yet we were deeming our half of the country as enemies of the state, and doing so while located on land that we stole and disrespectfully pretend like we didn't. And this is the current Republican Party. This is who is in charge of America right now. The administration with a president, a leader that deems no quarter to his opposition. In celebrating 250 years. We are 250 years into this country, and this is what we have 250 years later as leadership. Our founding fathers weren't perfect, no doubt. Some of them were quite horrible, actually. And a lot of them actually fought and argued and couldn't stand each other because there was such division in our founding fathers and those who, created the Constitution. But that's the reason why the Constitution was created the way it was, to allow for differences of opinions and everybody working together. That was the democracy. The point of the democracy was, even though we have such harsh divisions, that over time those things would be litigated out and things could be changed and altered. And it's because some of them knew that even though there were a lot of people that wanted to suppress and wanted to, be as evil as they wanted to be, and were, questionable in the progression of this country, that ultimately, still, the idea is that ultimately good prevails. And that ultimately, eventually, we would work through all of those issues, and that rights would be given more and more and more and more to people. I truly believe there were some members in there that actually thought that they couldn't push it in that moment, but they thought that eventually that would happen. And they were right to a degree. It was working that way, even slowly, very slowly. It was working that way. We were working our way to greatness. But in a desperate attempt to hold on and to send us back, we now have leadership. We now have a movement. MAGA, Trump, everybody surrounding him, everybody supporting him, everybody celebrating him. A movement that is erasing all of that, while making the claim that anybody that opposes them is making an attempt to erase American history by claiming the things like stolen land, by claiming, our very accurate history of hatred and evil acts, to put it nicely. These people, all they do is project everything that they do onto their opposition. That's quite literally what Trump does, what his entire administration does, what basically all of MAGA does, is project their opinions, their thoughts, their mind, their ideology. They project that evil, that hatred onto everybody else, to point the finger and blame and say that they are the problem, when everything that they declare as the opposition is actually what they are themselves. This is concerning. This speech was extremely concerning, and should be remembered. The question is, in the future, will it be remembered? Will this history be remembered as a time where a speech like this, a speech that's trying and attempting to sow such division, is going to be accepted or not? I can only hope that in the future that it will be remembered, this moment will be remembered as the masses not agreeing, as the masses not accepting this type of speech and this type of moment in history, not accepting, celebrating this 250th year as a positive moment in American history. But with me, at the very least, I am doing this as a small part, and talking about this and discussing this and trying to bring it to the forefront as much as possible, to contribute to honesty and truth around this moment in history, that hopefully will help to make it clear that it was not accepted. Just like not celebrating the 4th of July yesterday, personally, myself, because I didn't feel like there was anything to celebrate. So that's how I remember it, and that's how I will always remember it. So let me know what you think. again, this is a moment that everybody needs to sit back and genuinely soak in the words that were said on July 3rd at Mount Rushmore and what that means for a majority of this country and for the future of this country going forward. Thank you very much for joining me. Let me know what you think. And until next time, peace, clear talk, I'm out.